I'm going to do a corner of basically just fabric and just my corners here set up. A corner fabric, a little bit of jewelry. I'm going to work on that right now. So for anybody, this shouldn't be a particularly different or difficult thing for you to draw. It really, it's no different than any other part of the face. In fact, I would tell you probably drawing the fabric or any of that other stuff is going to be pretty much, it might be easier than drawing the facial features and things like that, because just like the hair, even if you don't get the fabric exactly right, it's still probably going to look like fabric as long as you have the right values and everything else in there appropriately. So I'm just going to sketch this out really quickly in the basic layout of things. Again, we don't want, there's a lot of implied edges and implied lines, so we don't want to make heavy dark outlines anywhere. What we do want to kind of hint at places where there's going to be some creases and going to be some of the folds. So like in this case, outside of that. And I think that I probably have just enough in here for what I need. Now, before I get started on the shading stuff, once again, I'm going to kind of clean up my outside and grid lines. Again, someone asked earlier about doing the backgrounds for the pictures. I'm not really concerned too much with the background of the picture. I don't think you need to do it, but I would like you to try to clean up that outside so we don't really see our grid lines. Then really with like in this case this fabric, none of this fabric is particularly bright. None of it has really, like, it has some light spots and dark spots, but overall almost all of it has a darker sort of dark to mid value. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of start off by giving it a little bit of gray. Just grab my blending stump. And what I'm going to do is just sort of start in and sort of just blend and smooth that in so I have like a base sort of color. Alright, so just to treat that this is a darker piece of fabric. Then as I look at it, really how to make fabric look realistic really comes down to a little bit of time and energy. Again, we don't want any like hard-edged outlines, but you want to kind of look for any place where you see some subtle sort of changes from light to dark. For Renaissance artists and painters like Da Vinci, even Michelangelo did some painting, and Jan van Eyck, and all these famous like Renaissance painters that you may have heard about in your foreign language classes, or you might have learned about in history during grade school. One of the greatest feats for them to do was to try to make fabric look realistic in a painting or a sculpture. It felt like if you were able to fool the eye into believing a piece of fabric looked like it was folded and creased and undulating in a realistic sort of way, that was like the measure of showing you were a great artist. So there's a long history of guys who just really painted fabric and painted that kind of stuff to kind of show off how good they were. So all it really is carefully reading where is it dark and where is it light, and trying to get those things over there. And with the fabric, it's not like the hair, where the hair I kind of was just basing what I was doing off of the flow and the idea of what the hair was doing. In this case, I'm really just trying to get the values correct off the page. So I'm literally just following what the picture shows me as far as light and dark. And again, this was a part of her particular picture where there is no really white fabric in here. It's all a darker color. So I started off with that darker gray, and now I'm working on adding just darker values to that, since there isn't much in terms of highlights in this particular spot. Another kind of big fold. And I'll come back and I'll do that earring after the fact. All right. How would I go about doing the earring? I think what I would do, and this one might not be, I mean, if I was doing this of, my wife or my daughter, I might sit there for a couple hours and work on getting all these little tiny things exactly like how the picture is. But in this version where I'm going to spend only a few minutes on it, what I would do is I'm starting off with my blending stump, and I'm looking to leave sort of what I see in the picture, just some white spots, and start off with just like a base gray, so that I've kind of like given like an overall, like a base tone, just like almost like how I did the hair of the earring, but I've started to kind of identify a couple of the white spots that I want to leave white. You can always come back with with an eraser to erase white spots in there, but my feeling is like the brightness of the paper never really comes back as bright, even with the eraser after you've done it. And I'm not really making stuff up over here, but I am trying to look to the picture to sort of base what I'm seeing as far as like lights and darks. Obviously this part of the picture is a little blurry. I'm not going to sit there and draw every little diamond. You could kind of pick out your actual earring and look at it and try to see like, okay, where are all the little stones and little things that go in there. But I think for me, all I'm really interested in right now is like, where is it dark and where is it light? Make that white stand out a little bit more. Just gotta make the areas around it just a touch darker. So I'm going in there and kind of slightly blending in those dark spots to kind of make some spots a little darker, a little lighter. I think what people will notice or get out of it when they look at it is they're gonna understand, okay, I see that's probably an earring. I can see how big it is. I can see that it has a lot of little parts in it and things like that. And really the picture doesn't give us a lot to go on because of the blurriness, but I wouldn't go overboard on this. I would again try to do what you see and try not too much to make stuff up. Just kind of go by what's there. So I have some light spots. If one of the light reflections doesn't stand out bright enough for you, just try to make the area around it a little darker. And if you make it a little bit darker, a lot of times that'll help it stand out. And really the overall value of this particular part of this particular piece, sort of getting in there. And I'm just using, this is the one time I'll use my blending stump like a pencil point, to where just the very sharp end of it is touching the paper. And what I've tried to do is sort of emulate a little bit of what I see going on in that particular area, as far as like some spots of white, some spots of dark. And to help this stand out a little bit, I'm going to get in there and kind of darken in some of the area around it to kind of give us a little bit of a feel of that. Probably a little bit more over here. Alright. And honestly, that little piece of jewelry is probably as hard of a detail as any of you are going to have in your picture. So don't go crazy as far as every last little stone in there. But I think if you get the basic lights and darks of what's going on in the photograph, you should be fairly pleased or close. I'm just going to give this just a couple more little darker spots. I'm just going to smudge them in just a little bit. Alright, so this would be my version of this corner of the picture, and you can see that all my shading and value is pretty much here throughout here on par with what you see in the picture. Maybe mine's a little bit lighter, but I told you, if anything, you can always be just a little bit lighter. And then for the earring, you don't have to go super duper crazy. I could, again, the same thing I was saying all the time, I could spend an hour working on this right now, just this little part. I don't expect that you're going to do that, but I do expect that you try to get the basic values and stuff like that as you see them. I'm gonna stop this one and I'll